1892, and the world trembles on the brink of change. Amazing new technologies such as the train and the telegraph connect people as never before. Dangerous new ideas about democracy and human rights are being hotly debated and shared between major centres of the world: London, Paris, New York and Christchurch. In this charming residence, situated some 3 miles from the centre of Christchurch, suffragists are gathering to celebrate. After a decade's effort, New Zealand women could soon win the right to vote regardless of class, race or creed. An effort coordinated by this woman.
Hello, yes, welcome.
Mrs. Kate Sheppard, Superintendent of the Suffrage Department of the Women's Christian Temperance Union, editor and writer, acknowledged leader of the struggle for votes for women, and mother to one son. What's the occasion?
Well, no. The electoral bill, which includes the right for women to vote, has now been debated by the upper house, and with some small amendments sent back down to the lower house.
And is that a bad thing?
No, on the contrary. The lower house only has to agree to these amendments and it becomes law.
This time we shall win.
Now, Will, as you know, we have been close before.
William Smith, printer, close friend and suffrage supporter. Like Kate, a devout Christian, nonconformist, vegetarian and teetotal.
I met Mrs. Sheppard nearly 10 years ago when she joined our little church choir. She has a very pleasant voice. I often visit on Saturday afternoons to discuss the latest pamphlets of news from abroad. Our little political saloon, she calls it.
Please help yourself to water or unfermented grape juice.
Thank you.
Kate.
Jenny Smith, active campaigner for women's rights and devoted wife to William Smith.
My darling Jenny. Oh, I'm so pleased you could be here today. I wouldn't miss it for the world.
Good afternoon.
My husband, Mr. Sheppard.
I'm on my way to town now. Good luck.
Thank you.
It's you?
It is.
Howdy, dog.
She'll want that right away.
Ralph Bennett is 14 years old. His parents are shopkeepers, good Baptists. Ralph is a curious boy.
Mum?
Well, look what I have. A telegram from Wellington from our friend Mr. Saunders. Do you think we should...
Oh, yes.
Mrs. Sheppard wrote to me some years ago, seeking my support for the cause of temperance. And since that time, we've become close friends. And she's the only one I know who can make unfermented grape juice seem elegant.
Alfred Saunders, maverick Liberal member for Selwyn, devout nonconformist, teetotal and prohibitionist.
Well, those of us representing the women's cause have moved an amendment to the Government Electoral Reform Bill where the word man is to be struck out in order to insert person.
The natural inference is that up to Anno Domini 1892, a woman was not a person in the eyes of the law. As she was not a person, she was necessarily a thing created solely for the pleasure of man.
It is all right. Unconditionally accepted. You have got the franchise. I should be home on Sunday. Hoist your colours high. We have done it.
You have done it. Speech.
Yes, speech.
Dear friends, as you know, last year we sent Parliament a petition signed by over 10,000 women requesting the right to vote. Our prayer was narrowly defeated in the upper house by 2 votes.
Ooh.
This year, we redoubled our efforts and more than 20,000 women signed. And now, at last, we shall become the first self-governing British colony, and indeed, the first nation in the world where women shall have the right to vote. To our many friends and supporters, we offer our heartfelt thanks. And propose a toast. For God, home and humanity.
God, home and humanity.
And to the many good men who made this possible.
Mr. Speaker, it is conceded to be unjust and inexpedient that one half of the adult population who must obey the laws of the colony should have no voice in making those laws.
Sir John Hall, former Premier, member for Christchurch, Conservative, Anglican and immensely rich, described by some as a devious manipulator and supporter of votes for women to counter the votes of working-class men.
Sir, the time has arrived when women should no longer, in the matter of political right,
Be placed on the same footing as infants, lunatics, and criminals.
These old gentlemen, they want to use the women, if they can, for their own ends.
The honourable gentleman is going beyond the rules of debate.
Henry Fish Jr., self-styled champion of the working man, father to 13 children, described as corrupt, immoral and close companion of a well-known brothel keeper.
The honourable member presents there is no need to discuss the subject further. How dare he say that? How dare he?
when the fish gets going, I find myself in need of a little brandy. Yes, it's been my privilege to provide advice to Mrs. Sheppard over the years. She's a charming woman.
If the members vote in favour of this amendment, the radicals of the Tailoresses Union and the Temperance Societies will be the first to get their names on the roll, and every man here will have cause to regret pandering to the demands
John Ballance, Premier of New Zealand, and not a well man.
of the Shrieking Sisterhood.
I've already telegraphed Mrs. Sheppard of our success.
Don't you think that premature?
Well, Mr. Ballance himself assured me we had the numbers.
Then why is Seddon looking so pleased with himself?
Parrots, that's who anyone can have parrots. My auntie's got a parrot as well. They've got this big chest full of treasure as well.
Richard Seddon, Liberal, known as King Dick, self-made man, West Coast friend to miners, described by a parliamentary colleague as being only partially civilised.
Oh, well, not nonsense. What else? He said, well, my mother had one eye, father had wooden leg. If I am reluctant to inflict the franchise on women, it is out of respect.
Aren't you afraid they might support prohibition?
No, not at all.
But you do own a public bar.
My wife and I have been married over 23 years now, and I love and respect her as my true helpmeet. Women are the virtue and compassion in our society. To have them mix it with men in the dirty pit of politics would be to, well, bring down angels and make devils of them. But if women were to get the vote, I'd sooner they voted for me. Gentlemen, there's to be a conference on the women's issue.
But the matter's already settled. The government have agreed.
Ah, now, sir, you're not a betting man, are you? The horses are yet to cross the line. Oh, you haven't heard. The Premier, Mr. Ballance, is taken ill, and I've been left to support his causes as best I can. Gentlemen.
I move the amendment of the following new clause. That the right granted to women to vote shall not be so exercised until the electors have been given the opportunity to vote on the question.
Back again? Oh, you poor little thing, you all done in?
No.
Off you go then.
Who are you to tell me what to do? You're just a girl. Papist pig.
And you're gonna burn in the fires of hell for all eternity.
Am not.
Would you like a drink of water and a bite to eat?
Yes.
Come on then. Hope you like your veggies raw.
Raw?
According to man, it's good for the blood.
Jolly good. You must be
be absolutely thrilled. And yourself?
Faddists have arrived.
Well, yes,
They look rather fetching.
Well, knickerbockers, zealots.
Makes perfect sense to me.
Wonderful news. Simply top hole.
Perhaps we could all take our machines and cycle.
Yes, a victory formation.
Ma'am? Oh, excuse me. A letter from our friend, Mr. Saunders again. You shall get the suffrage, but only on the condition it is reaffirmed by general election. Cowards.
Shame.
Excuse me, what does that mean?
The government wishes to use the next general election as a referendum to test the water. I believe we must accept this compromise.
This referendum's a dangerous game. If they get the vote once, they won't give it back.
I ain't finished yet. I fear that someone might bring to the House the vexing subject of electors' rights.
Electors...
And they say I'm the slippery one.
Can you tell me, what are electors' rights?
Oh, they allow for itinerant workers, sailors, shearers and the like, to have a postal vote.
And why is that a concern?
It causes me no concern.
The Conservatives would have all women vote in that way, rather than at the polling booths with the men.
And why is that an issue?
Women will still have the vote.
By post.
It is still a vote.
Subject to interference by the head of the household, their employer, or any man who would impose his will.
It is a compromise, but a compromise I'm prepared to take.
Oh, you would say that.
I beg your pardon.
Do you deny that the postal vote favours the rural households, business owners, and therefore the Conservative cause, coincidentally your own?
So, you will vote against the motion.
It is an insult against the most basic of democratic principles and the sanctity of the private ballot.
Then that is your decision.
Once a Tory, always a Tory.
Sir, I think this conversation is at an end.
Sir John has proven himself to be a false friend. He promotes his own agendas and those of the Conservatives at any cost.
Mr. Saunders writes again. I was deceived in what I last telegraphed, and Parliament has proved at the last moment that the publicans are their friends and women their dupes. The bill had been compromised and could not be passed. We've lost any chance of gaining the vote this year.
Bloody cow.
Here's to the right of every man to a well-earned drink and to our politics are free from interfering women.
Well, 3 telegraphs from Mr. Saunders all on one day, taking us from certain victory to resounding defeat. I'm sorry. It appears we've wasted your time. Will you excuse me?
Of course.
Mum said it again. Right?
That'll do, girl. I'll be off to Invercargill now. Probably be a week or so.
Safe journey.
It's a strange sort of marriage, if you ask me. Mum is often out at meetings and concerts, and more often than not, it's with Mr. Smith.
Bridget O'Flaherty, age 16. Born Sydenham, Christchurch, she works 12 hours a day, 6.5 days a week, and receives £15 a year. And board.
I'll expect I'll marry, I should hope, before I turn 21. I'll be an old maid.
Would your mother vote?
My ma works every minute God sends, cooking and cleaning, and the younger 6 are still at home. She's worn out, and so's my da. And I've never known him to vote, even if he can.
Bridget!
Yeah, Mum?
Is it right that your mother, your sister, your wife or your daughter should be classed with criminals and lunatics or treated as aliens from a foreign country? Is it right that while the loafer, the gambler, the drunkard and even the wife-beater has a vote, earnest, educated and refined women are denied it? Is it right? What is it, Bridget?
Mr. Smith, ma'am.
Excuse me. Walter is in Invercargill, and I am planning a new garden.
Shouldn't we be preparing our next assault upon Parliament?
I don't know, Will. After all the speeches and meetings, so much talking, all those words you've printed for us.
God's help we shall prevail.
Yes.
Speak of the devil.
Splendid afternoon, Father.
Although Will and Kate are devout Christians, not all churchmen approve of women voting, much less women cyclists.
Surely I can't be the first lady cyclist he's ever seen. Shall we ride?
We shall.
I was a teacher before I married, but gave it up, and willingly so. 'Tis within the women's sphere to be a wife and a mother and a loving and equal partner with her husband. If he be the head of the household, surely she's the heart. Will and I have been blessed with 8 children, and I'm expecting my 9th.
If Jenny Smith is aware of the gossip around town that her husband is known as the man with 2 wives, she'll never say.
Mrs. Sheppard only has the one son, so it's natural she should devote more time to her good works, to which my husband is also committed. Perhaps, and I mean this is the highest praise, perhaps she has more of a man's mind.
You boys!
Run!
Hey! I know your faces! I'll have the constable round, I will. Little monsters.
They're only repeating what they've heard their elders say. Oh, my night of muddy trousers.
Well, I'm considering your sister's advice to invest in knickerbockers.
Oh, that's where I draw the line.
Katie, what happens now? Do we go on fighting for the vote?
Of course.
And if we win, then what?
First, political representation, then the right to equal work for equal pay, and eventually full social and legal equality with...
I'm not talking about slogans.
Will.
I love you, Katie. You know that.
Yes, I know. But let's stop
If I
listening.
could change this world, it would be so we could be together.
But we are together. In the only way we can be. And I have the best, most loyal friend anyone could ever wish for.
Father Dunn said that God only made man in his image, not woman. He calls them suffragists terrible things. Ugly and loud-mouthed and cranks. Not that he's referring to Mum specifically. Would I sign the petition if I were 21? No, I would not.
Now that the issue of the vote is no longer pressing...
You think not?
There is still much to be done. The issue of barmaids, for example.
But surely we agree. If a woman has the vote, she's more likely to choose men who support temperance.
Yes, but we don't have the vote, do we?
Mrs. Emma Pack, widow of the late Colonel Pack of the 2nd Canterbury Rifle Volunteers. Devout evangelist, once described as the leader of the Hallelujah Lasses and national president of the Women's Christian Temperance Union.
In the meantime, these girls are subject to the most degrading of conditions. They simply must be banned from working in all public houses.
But if they're suddenly made unemployed, they could turn to prostitution.
No, I've heard that theory.
Where is the milk? Excuse me.
I'll admit Mrs. Sheppard and I have not always seen eye to eye. At my late husband's funeral, there was permitted to be no music. I think that tells you a great deal of the differences between us.
They're talking nonsense and I don't mind saying so.
Bridget!
Coming, Mum! My sister's down Dunedin at the Grand Hotel. Earns twice as much as I do, more with tips. She always sends some of it home.
I understand you're concerned with this new Ladies' Institute.
The Canterbury Women's Institute, yes. A forum to discuss current social, political and religious issues.
Accepting Catholics, socialists, Jews, whatever next, skeptics.
If they're prepared to pay their membership fee.
I intend to move at our national conference that only women who are born again in the spirit of Jesus Christ are eligible to be office holders. I say this merely to let you know.
And I intend to oppose it. Again.
The Women's Christian Temperance Union, it's not...
It's not really us.
No.
We at the Canterbury Women's Institute are less concerned with the prohibition of alcohol. And we are open to both sexes.
James Wilkinson, librarian, and his lover and former student, Katrine Walker. Fabian socialists and bohemians, they believe passionately in dress reform.
The knicker costume exactly suits the healthy, undistorted form of woman who, on donning it, at once feels a delightful freedom and immediate desire for active muscular exercise.
Which will undoubtedly enable women to enjoy a higher companionship with men and lead inevitably to equality
between the sexes in all things.
Parliament is in recess for another year. The wheel of political fortune has once more stopped spinning, and the electoral bill allowing for the enfranchisement of women, after being tossed from lower house to upper house and back again, has been dropped once more. But I can assure you, we have no intention of leaving it there.
Sir George Whitmore, Henry Fish.
Fish? Unfortunate name.
Sir George Whitmore, owner of large estates in the Hawke's Bay, member of the Upper House, firmly opposed to granting the franchise to women.
As a rule, I wouldn't sit at the same table as men such as these. Coarse opportunists, mountebanks. However, these are unusual times.
They'll be planning their next assault, these she-men and temperance agitators and blue stockings.
Steady on, old boy. There's no need to descend to name-calling.
Sir George, I'm sure we all want the issue of the women's vote to go away. But for some of us, there are political considerations.
I have no such concerns.
No, of course. Well, that's easy for him to say. Members of the upper house, such as Sir George, are appointed by the government, whereas those of us in the lower house live or die by the ballot.
So, if women get the vote, you don't want to be on the wrong side?
Ah, no, I couldn't possibly comment. What say you, sir? Can we count on your support in this issue?
I'd say you're fools to have let it go this far. Everything in the world is free to a woman, as long as she asks for it gracefully in a womanly way. Why thrust her into the rough world of politics? Perhaps Mrs. Sheppard should take the advice of good society.
My goodness!
Is it right that a naturalised Chinaman or any other foreigner should have a vote, while women born in this country, educated in its schools, and with a sincere love for their native land, are without a voice in the laws under which they live. Bridget.
Ma'am?
Did ask not to be interrupted.
Yes, ma'am. Call him, ma'am.
Oh, see. Excuse me.
Okay.
Mrs. Sheppard.
Will you take tea?
Perhaps a small sherry. Dry.
There is no alcohol in this house, I'm afraid.
No, of course not.
Lady Tancred, the extremely rich widow of Baronet Tancred, large Canterbury landowner. Income in excess of £12,000 per annum.
I believe it to be the cause of many of our worst social evils.
Indeed. My late husband used to say it was impossible to be a gentleman and not to enjoy a good port wine.
And yet many do.
You are more handsome than I expected.
Thank you.
Is all this agitation really necessary, my dear? Don't you already rule your house? Doesn't your husband already bend to your will?
Pardon me, Lady Tancred. Was there a purpose to your visit?
Do you honestly believe it will be a better world if my maid should have a vote? For my maid is a very stupid person.
Then perhaps we should educate her.
You'd have a better chance teaching my horse. And if you gave my horse the vote, surely he would vote for our other horses? And then we shall have a parliament full of horses. Or asses, perhaps. This country is going to hell, and we have the Liberals to thank for it. See where one man, one vote has so far got us.
Halfway there. Rather fond of statistics.
Oh, I can see you think you're very clever. Pity.
To make my position perfectly clear, a vote is a privilege, not a right. There is no inherent right for women to vote.
No more or less than it is any man's right to vote.
There's a number of masculine women anxious to press this point, but no ladies of my acquaintance want the franchise.
Sir George should expand his circle of acquaintances.
Good women will stay at home and not vote. For the ones who do will be rough and common, very likely vote Liberal.
Do not good conservative women go out to shop and attend church?
Women are impulsive, irrational, more emotionally generous than men, which makes them good wives and mothers, but bad judges of politics.
Or more likely to vote for morally superior politicians.
Women are now protected by chivalry, but will lose that protection.
The law currently protects the drunkard, the wife-beater, the rapist, but not the wives of these chivalrous men.
It is well known that women are more often under the sway of the clergy, who will gain far too much power over the state.
But according to Sir George, they will vote the same way as their husbands.
In any case, we cannot say whether the majority of men do or do not hold this view until it has been tested in a general election.
The current government was elected on a platform that included a commitment to the women's vote.
Lady Whitmore, by the way, is in complete agreement.
She has my full sympathy.
I've written to nearly every member in Parliament, and to judge by their replies, more are in favour of our cause than against. And yet, they argue and bicker over the smallest points, and so allow the real issue to slip away.
Of course. Duplicity and corruption are foreign to our nature. Perhaps a little matchmaking is in order?
Feminine charm, you think?
Ada Wells, socialist, feminist and natural healer. Kate's ally and friend.
Sir John.
My dear Mrs. Sheppard, a pleasure as always.
You remember my good friend, William Smith?
Oh, the printer. Yes, of course. Hello.
Sir John.
Saunders.
Tea, Sir John.
Thank you.
Now, I am in desperate need of advice. And as you have both given such wise and consistent counsel over so many years, I thought it best to consult you both. And so, here we are.
Thank you.
since our franchise bill was defeated.
We all know why.
Because the Liberals opposed it.
Despite the best intentions of good men on both sides of the House.
Aye.
As you know, we have no political favourites.
I can respect a wrong-headed, consistent Tory, but an evasive, tricky Liberal is a nauseous thing to swallow. I mean, Seddon.
Quite.
I have never blindly followed this government, but I've always followed the dictates of my own conscience.
Wonderful. Because we feel the time has come to make public our dissatisfaction.
Indeed.
Arrangements have been made to occupy the Oddfellows Hall this coming Friday and present this motion, expressing our deep dismay at the actions of this government in rejecting the electoral bill. Now, I thought, perhaps, this motion should be moved first by Mr. Saunders, as it is critical of his own party, and then seconded by Sir John. But I am happy to be corrected on this point, Sir John.
No, that sounds most sensible.
Oh, I'm glad.
Naturally, I'm happy to help in any way.
As am I.
Then it's settled. Gentlemen, as always, I remain in your debt.
With the cross of Jesus going on before, Christ the royal master leads against the foe. Forward into battle, see his banners go. On with Christian soldiers, marching as to war.
We now invite the member for Selwyn, Mr. Alfred Saunders, to present the first resolution of this meeting.
Thank you, James. It is the opinion of this meeting that the action of the government in electing to reject the whole electoral bill rather than accept the amendments enfranchising women to vote is very much to be regretted and does not appear consistent with any earnest desire to secure the boon that was so evidently placed within their immediate reach.
Who will second this motion?
I will.
Thank you, Sir John. All those in favour?
I wish to speak to the resolution. And propose that in the opinion of this meeting, the government did quite right in dropping the electoral bill.
Well said.
And rejecting the amendments added by the lackeys of the Conservatives. Because the compromise of a postal vote is entirely unacceptable.
I second that motion.
Point of order. We already have a resolution before us.
Then let's vote on it. Go on.
Yeah.
Yes, all right. All those in favour of Mr. Saunders' resolution?
Aye.
And all those against?
Wanganui Herald says it all. Saunders hoist with his own petard. Sir John's idiot puppet.
When ladies choose to meddle in politics, there will always be unscrupulous men poised to take advantage.
They're fools! Government spies!
They were merely exercising their democratic right.
How can you be so tolerant?
No, I'm not. Believe me when I say I'm furious.
No, we were set up by the government and Seddon.
I've no doubt.
Kate.
Well, it's late.
I can't bear this.
I'm tired of talking about it.
I don't mean damn politics. What are we to do?
There's nothing we can do. Oh, that's enough. Will, please. Don't. Good night, Will.
Good night, Mrs. Sheppard.
Gentlemen.
Ladies.
Oh, have you heard?
Andrew.
Mr. Fish is standing for Mayor of Dunedin. Not if Miss Morrison has her way. No, I hear her union is very keen to have fish removed from the menu.
Ladies, how are we today?
Very well, thank you.
All right. Afternoon, sir. Lovely to see you.
Ah! Miss Morrison. Always a pleasure.
Harriet Morrison, born Londonderry, Northern Ireland, former tailoress, now secretary of the Tailoresses Union, Dunedin.
Our Lord Jesus Christ was founder and first leader of the Women's Franchise League. But I was a founding member of the Dunedin branch, the first in all New Zealand. I believe in trying to see the best in all people. There's not much that can't be solved with prayer and persuasion. But, oh, there is one man I can't abide, and I don't mind saying it. That odious Mr. Fish. I hear a candidate as our next mayor.
What of it?
You don't honestly believe you have a hope.
Oh, I think you'll find the working men of Dunedin.
Go home to their wives, and what do you think they'll talk about? Well, I'll tell you. A good number of those wives have been to our meetings where we've discussed a woman's right to vote.
It's not a right. A woman's right is to look after her children, cook her husband's dinner, empty the slops, and generally attend to the domestic and marital affairs for which nature designed her.
Let me tell you, Mr. Fish, a popular subject at our meetings is the poor, ignorant politician who opposes suffrage and how we might facilitate his speedy departure from public life.
Another reason you should not have the vote.
Just thought you might like to know how the wind was blowing.
Oh, I know a spinster who doesn't go home to her husband because no man would have her.
Says the man who keeps company with a well-known brothel keeper.
Didn't Christ keep the company of prostitutes?
Are you comparing yourself to our Saviour now? Oh, will you be walking on water next?
No. Just walking into office as your next mayor.
God help us.
Oh, I wouldn't rely on him. And when I am mayor, you might find it safer to carry on your business elsewhere.
Oh, dear me. Is that a threat, Mr. Fish? Oh, it's a terrible thing to say to a poor defenceless woman such as myself. I shan't be able to sleep for fear! Poor deluded man.
I wrote to Sir John for his advice on how best to proceed. He suggests yet another petition as the best way to demonstrate our unwavering desire for franchise.
One cannot help but wonder at Sir John's true purpose.
I can't see how yet another petition will help.
We must keep it in the public eye.
If we can produce sufficient numbers.
If we do any less, it's a weapon in the hands of our opponents.
We all agree that the vote is important.
Well, of course, but there are so many other pressing issues.
But we must do something, or momentum will be lost and nothing will change.
'Tis late in the year to be in need of a fire.
You are tired.
As are we all.
Good night, Mama. Good night, ma'am.
Good night, Douglas.
What a very proper young gentleman.
How are your children?
I do my best. Oh, but how does one know what that means? One's best. Sometimes I think you fortunate with only the one son to cherish.
As you know, I've had my problems.
I've had 4 children in as many years. I believe that's enough. I lost my last job when I fell pregnant.
Do you encourage... Interrupt us.
When he's sober, he takes responsibility. Other times, sea sponge soaked with vinegar. I have a husband who, when sober, is filled with remorse and tenderness. But when he drinks, he loses all restraint and would brutally force himself, which is completely legal within the domain of his home, which is his castle. But the worst of it, my children are completely aware. How can they not be corrupted by it? And what of the laws of heredity? They say an evil tree bears evil fruit.
It will be all right.
Will it? Will a vote change so very much?
It is a place to begin.
As long as it's not the end of it.
We will send out the new petition before the summer break, so our women can take it with them wherever they go. The petition of the undersigned women of the age of 21 years and upwards, resident in the colony of New Zealand, humbly showeth that large numbers of women in the colony
have for several years petitioned Parliament to extend the franchise to them. That the justice
of the claim and the expediency of granting it was, during the last session of Parliament, affirmed by both houses.
But for reasons not affecting the principle of women's franchise, its exercise has not been provided for.
That if such a provision is not made before the next general election, your petitioners will be denied the enjoyment of what has been admitted by Parliament to be a just right, and will suffer grievous wrong.
They therefore earnestly pray your Honourable House to adopt such measures as will enable women to record their votes for members in the House of Representatives at the ensuing general election.
They further pray that your Honourable House will pass no electoral bill which shall fail to secure women this privilege. This time we must win, for I cannot see us having another chance. I've prepared a new prayer for our petition. I've sent this draft to Sir John and he has approved it.
And I shall print it.
We are aiming for 30,000. Fear we shall be lucky to find 25.
I have faith in you.
I understand congratulations are in order.
And for what reason?
New baby girl, isn't it?
It's Doris. Mother and daughter doing well.
Do you wonder what kind of world your daughters will grow up in?
A brighter one, I should hope.
Another petition. Could blow up in their faces, don't you think?
I don't think. But if I did, I'd tell her to leave it alone.
Don't you want to vote?
Couldn't care less.
How else are you to overcome the disabilities of your sex?
Is that why you're always hanging about? Because of concern for our sex?
No.
Or is it because you want to kiss me?
Well, yes, of course. The petition has been mentioned in correspondence to the branches.
I worry that some of our members have become less enthusiastic.
It has rather dragged on. And there's so much to be done.
That's why it's so important for those with a more enduring vision to keep the less committed on the righteous path.
I suppose that is true.
After all, we both firmly believe that extending the franchise to women will have the result of purifying the atmosphere and raising moral standards, do we not?
Well, yes, of course. I should be on to all our members and remind them to do their bit.
I am so pleased to hear that, Mrs. Pack. I have taken the liberty of preparing a map of our city with the streets and suburbs mapped out for the canvassing of supporters. It's important to be thorough, don't you agree?
Well, yes.
Now, if you could only encourage our members to take one section each.
Yes, of course.
Here we are.
Goodness, it's a lot of paper.
It'll be a very large petition.
How fortunate I am to have a friendly printer when I need him. Isn't that so, Mr. Saunders?
Indeed. Lydia?
Where are we this afternoon?
West Melton, I believe. Mrs. Sheppard has been in great demand.
Oh, to be honest, I've almost lost the urge to speak. What is there left to say except give the Irish answer?
And what is that?
That there is no good or logical reason why women should not get the vote. Thank you so much for seeing me.
Oh, no bother at all. But you're just in time. I'm off to Auckland to knock that branch of the Tailoresses Union into shape. They're lagging behind.
You're a busy woman, I know.
Well, there's so much to be done. There are thousands of women, working women, who want a say in the running of the country. Only, between you and me, the well-meaning ladies of Christchurch can be a little exclusive. And their meetings are often dominated by men, good men, but men all the same. Our southern meetings are loud and large affairs. We make a point of having women speakers. As our Mr. Fish discovered to his loss. Did you hear? Mr. Fish lost his bid to be Dunedin's next mayor. His friends in Parliament best take note.
So, I can take it you support this new petition?
Our members will do their bit, be sure of that. But what of our northern sisters?
I have written to Mrs. Reeves and others in Wellington and in Auckland. Mrs. Daldy has taken to the field.
Mrs. Daldy.
My first husband drank. When he died, I resolved to marry a man who did not. My Mr. Daldy believes that men who do not support votes for women are cowards.
Mrs. Amy Daldy, founding member of the Auckland branch of the Women's Christian Temperance Union, president of the Women's Franchise League, and staunch Congregationalist.
Sir, I wish this petition to be placed in plain view for all to see.
I'm sorry.
Consider, this is a draper's store and a large number of your customers women. Where will they go for their cloth and ribbon if it were known that you perpetuate the subjugation of women, which we know to be against God himself? For did he not give us both, man and woman, dominion over the earth and sea? And did he not say to Abraham, in all that Sarah hath said unto thee, hearken unto her voice? What of brave Boadicea, scourge of the Romans? Elizabeth, the warrior queen, Florence Nightingale, or Miss Willard, well, president of the WCTU, and a host of other women who overcame the disabilities of their sex to do great things. Would you deny the intelligence and worth of these women? I thought not.
At one house in the poorer district, the lady of the house said she could not sign. When I asked her why, she said she had to wait till her Tommy got home from school as he had the family pen.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Have you ever thought about wearing knickerbockers? You have a wonderful range of movement.
Knickerbockers for everyone. I will return next week with fresh sheets.
Good night, Kate. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Walter. There is much in the past year to comfort and cheer. Mr. Fish was roundly defeated in Dunedin. And 3 times now has our wish for franchise been passed by the lower house, only to falter in the upper house on a technicality. Our members are gathering signatures for a new petition to present to Parliament. Even so, there are times of despondency when the heart sickness of hope deferred seems overwhelming. Good night.
The new year brought good news to Willenday. The Lord has blessed us, and I'm with child again. 'Twill be our 10th.
What of the response to Mrs. Sheppard's petition? My wife is obliged with many signatures from ladies of her acquaintance.
Yes, I understand Mr. Balance's wife has obtained a great many.
Any news on the health of our Premier?
He's determined to see through the Liberal agenda, including the franchise.
Good, good.
Why not?
What's he got to be so happy about?
I could not believe it when I heard that Henry Fish went and organised a petition of his own asking Parliament not to grant the franchise to women. Paid for, no doubt, by his friends the brewers and liquor barons. Aye, they know full well when women get the vote, they'll be eligible not only to vote for the politician of their choice, but also against the granting of liquor licences.
He must be a very frightened fish.
Indeed.
I have reliable information that Fish is paying his canvassers 7 shillings for every 100 signatures obtained. His petition is circulated in public houses, where patrons are bribed with the promise of free drinks.
Mr. Smith, ma'am.
William, come. You're just in time. Lay the handle down here, Bridget. There's a go. We'll just roll it. Careful now, don't let it tear. William, can you feed it to us?
Yes.
Gently, now, gently. We will get there and Mr. Fish can go jump.
Into a pond.
A very small pond. And I have this. A letter from our Premier. Mr. Balance will introduce the Electoral Reform Bill early in Parliament, and he will not allow the introduction of electoral rights or any other distractions.
Well, that's wonderful news.
I've finished my page for the Prohibitionist, and now I feel as though I've forgotten what the world looks like. Would you care to take a walk, Mr. Smith?
It would be my very great pleasure. I fear I have a confession to make.
Shall I be shocked?
Perhaps. It begins with a word. Bacon.
Oh, no.
So I thought I should be the one to tell you.
I have just read a fascinating pamphlet, in fact, about how the consumption of red meat inflames the animal passions, encouraging men to vice and strong drink.
It was a small plate of bacon. Kate, you were right.
There's no need.
Yes, I will say it now, and then we never need to mention it again. I've loved you since the first day we met. And I will love you to the last breath I draw. But you're right. We are together in the only way we can be.
Thank you, Will.
Oh, the Atalanta Women's Cycling Club. Oh, they're wonderful.
Atalanta, the Greek goddess of the hunt, adventure, and travel.
Appropriate, don't you think?
It was founded by the wonderful Mrs. Alice Burns, who is keen to start a rational dress association. Mrs. Burns is suggesting that James and I be married. She believes it will make our association more respectable.
But as rationalists and socialists, we are opposed to the bourgeois institution that's nothing more than a contract of property and ownership.
Our love is as nature intended it.
What's the connection between cycling and women's rights?
Well, just as the wheel of the bicycle gives me a larger world to live in, so the wheel of progress gives me a larger world to think in.
Yes.
What on earth is going on?
In the past few hours, everything's changed.
Oh, thank you, Will. That was invigorating.
Thank you for hearing my confession. The bacon.
Just don't do it again, you naughty boy.
Mrs. Sheppard. Urgent telegraph.
You're right, young man.
Premier. He's dead, Mum. Mr. Balance is dead.
Your man, Mr. Balance, he was sick for a long time, was he not? Well, then it was probably a blessing. But where does this leave the vote? What are you on about? Mrs. Sheppard said he was our best hope. Have you been reading our mail?
Only the telegraphs.
What do you care about the vote? It won't change a thing.
It's a start.
Of what?
Of emancipation.
And what's that?
Women, equal with men, able to do the same things, have the same jobs, be equal.
Like, I could have your job.
I don't know.
And you could have mine. Do you want it? You're welcome to it.
No.
Leave the poor boy alone. He's simple.
Parliament will miss his wise counsel. He was ever generous, alike to opponents and friends. And I might say truthfully that we shall never see his like again.
Mr. Balance had previously mentioned a member of Cabinet, a Mr. Reeves, as a possible successor, so we held out some hope. But, alas.
Personally speaking, I owe him a great debt of gratitude. He was always willing to work in harmony with colleagues in the best interests of the ministry. So, after much soul-searching, I have decided to accept the decision of the ministers of this government to select me as Premier.
Order! It's difficult to believe how a man so uneducated, whose speeches betray such scanty acquaintance with affairs, who holds the traditions of Parliament in such contempt. How can such a man as this be our Premier?
I had given my promise to the late Mr. Balance to uphold the franchise question, and I hold that promise to be binding and sacred. But politics are never that straightforward.
News from Wellington. The electoral bill has passed through its second reading.
Why, that's good news, isn't it?
Now the bill has stalled, held up on parliamentary business.
For how long?
No one seems to know.
We've just given the good members something much more important to worry about. The rights of members to travel free upon the railways. It should occupy the debate for some time.
Giving the enemies of suffrage time to marshal their reserves.
I asked Sir John if I should write to Mr. Seddon directly, but he thought that unwise. He said he is very cunning and might twist anything I write to his own ends.
Don't come so close and for it to slip away.
It might not be all that bad.
How can you say that?
Well, I was merely pointing out...
It's appalling.
We still have our friends in Parliament, Mr. Saunders, Mr. Hall.
Yes, who were there last year and the years before and couldn't manage it then.
We still have the petition.
And there are 12 new councillors in the upper house. And Mr. Seddon says we only need 7 on our side to win. Dear Jenny is right. We do have the petition. With 25,570 votes so far and rising to 766 feet long.
First rate.
Indeed.
I suppose that, at least, is good news.
Yes. And I'm hoping for still more before Sir John presents it.
Very well. I will not be gloomy anymore.
Ah, more good news. Mr. William Sidney Smith is not gloomy anymore.
Fish is presenting his own devious petition today.
So I understand.
Are you not concerned?
Not in the slightest. I have a note from Miss Morrison.
And now, you see, we have very nearly finished cooking our fish.
I have much pleasure in presenting to the House this petition of some 5,000 signatures against the granting of the franchise to women.
Sir! Is it true you paid for those signatures?
It is not.
And that it was signed by men as well as women as young as 18?
What of it?
And that some were collected by fraudulent means?
I object to the honourable member's accusation!
Mr. Speaker, I have here a letter signed by over 90 women from Dunedin claiming they were tricked into signing or signed in the belief they were making their mark in support of the vote for women. I left it to Sir John to deliver the coup de grace.
I seek leave to present this to the House, a number of petitions from women of the age of 21 years and upwards in favour of the extension of the franchise to women.
Is that all? And he said my one was small.
Mr. Speaker, I apologise. I seem to have presented the wrong one. Now, this is the petition. I believe it to be the greatest ever presented in Australasia.
With a further contribution of 2,301 signatures from the Honourable Member for Waitangi, it made the grand total to 31,872 signatures, all fairly obtained, all from women in this colony of voting age.
Very good, well done.
With more time, I believe we could have done even better.
I've no doubt.
But still, 1/4 of eligible women have signed, and many are far-flung and living in isolation.
You've reason to be pleased. Your mother's a very important woman, Douglas. We must be proud.
Let Mr. Fish say now that women are not in favour of the franchise.
I move that the following amendment to the electoral bill be made. That the word man be struck out and be replaced by the word person.
He's tricky, all right. My fear is he can lie to us as ably as he lies to the suffragists. We're all keen to know, straight, where we stand now.
Where I've always stood. The rights of every working man for a fair day's pay for a fair day's work and a well-earned drink if he wants one. Thank God a majority of the upper house is still opposed to the vote. Mr. Speaker, I move that the electoral reform bill be agreed to by the members and returned to the upper house for a final reading.
Sir, the men of this colony are relying on us to hold fast against these radicals and extremists, even if it means riding for a fall. You cannot let those damn women grind you under their heels.
Enough!
We cannot prevent the bill passing through the lower house.
But then it returns to the upper house one final time.
You have a plan?
Well, now, when do I not?
Seddon was putting all his eggs in the upper house basket, relying on them to do our work. Well, he's tricky, all right, is our King Dick.
Seddon has always shown scant respect for the parliamentary process, but this time...
This time it was he who was hoist on his own petard and hoist high.
I hold womankind in the highest esteem, which is why, when the bill was returned to the upper house, I moved that the words to be inserted after the clause should read, "Person does not include woman." But my motion was not carried.
It's gonna be all right. Come on then, what's going on? Give this to Mrs. Sheppard. She must know. She's not here. She went by train to Dunedin a few days ago. She'll be back by tonight. Right. Hey, hold your horses. Where are you going with that telegraph? I'm gonna wait for it at the station.
Mr. Seddon's own trickery was his undoing.
trickery and a poor grasp of mathematics. When he realised he had miscalculated his numbers, he tried to bully one of his own government-appointed councillors in the upper house to vote as he instructed. That honourable councillor declined.
As a result, two other councillors, Reynolds and Stevens, angered by this breach of protocol, changed their vote to spite Mr. Seddon.
Two gentlemen who cared not one jot for the women's franchise changed their vote to yes because they were so aggrieved by Mr. Seddon's lack of respect for parliamentary tradition. And now this bill...
Oh, this bill we've fought so long and hard for.
This bill has been passed. Could a woman be more stupid?
How do you feel now, Mrs. Sheppard?
I want to celebrate, and yet we've been so close before.
We have sent white camellias to all our supporters and red to shame the ones who oppose us. I'm not sure what more...
We should organise a protest ride.
Take it right to the governor's house. Excuse me, is there some kind of problem?
The bill has gone to the governor, but he will not sign.
I presented a petition from 3,000 concerned citizens of Auckland protesting against this bill to the governor, Lord Glasgow, who is, by the way, an old friend.
If the governor agrees, you could delay signing the bill until we are too late for this coming election.
We drafted a letter in the strongest terms.
Perhaps letter writing is no longer enough.
I think we need to take action.
And so now we have to wait through the longest weekend of our lives. From Mr. Seddon. He wishes to inform me that...
The electoral bill was assented to by His Excellency at 11:45 this day, and we trust now that all doubts as to the government's sincerity in this very important matter have been effectively removed.
Hypocrite.
Indeed.
Casey. We've done it.
We really have.
Congratulations, Mama.
Thank you, Douglas.
Good show.
We've got it! We really got it!
I'm still not voting.
Then you'd be an idiot.
I first began pressing for women's rights 50 years ago, in 1843. I thank God I've lived long enough to see this day.
In only 6 weeks, the Suffrage League and others enrolled a staggering 109,000 women out of a total population of perhaps 130,000 women of voting age. Despite predictions of mayhem and depravity, over 90,000 New Zealand women exercised their right to vote, the first of any nation in the world to do so.
In the freshness of a bright sunny morning, we took our way to the polling booth. The fresh summer dresses of the women, the brushed-up appearances of the men, and the cheery, courteous greetings of friends and neighbours gave a festive air to the proceedings.
Sir John Hall did not stand for re-election. Despite his hopes that women would vote Conservative, in reality, the women's vote had little effect on the balance of power. Richard Seddon went on to be Liberal Premier for 13 years and was happy to take credit for the women's franchise.
As I wrote to my wife and daughters, at least there are 4 more votes I can now count on.
Mr. Fish was less fortunate. That year, he was voted out of Parliament. He died a few years later of throat cancer. Alfred Saunders retained his seat of Selwyn. He remained close friends with Kate Sheppard until his death in 1904. Ada Wells continued to fight for women's rights and was the first woman elected to the Christchurch City Council. James Wilkinson and Katrine Walker were finally convinced to marry, but they did so in true Knickerbocker style. Bridget O'Flaherty never voted. She died of tuberculosis, aged 19. Ralph Benner went on to become a senior postmaster. It was said Ralph did as his wife told him. Despite Emma Pack's prayers for moral purity, women voted on the basis of religion, region, and above all, class. Just like men, in fact. Jenny Smith was kept busy raising her 10 children, but remained a close friend to Kate Sheppard. None of her 5 daughters ever married. Kate and her husband were separated in 1896. She moved in with Jenny and Will at their house in Riccarton, where she lived for 30 years. William Smith continued to insist that theirs was an affair of the mind only. Jenny Smith died in 1924. Kate was by then a widow. In 1925, Kate and Will were married. She was 77 years old, he was 73. They had only 4 more years together before he died.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.